Welcome to Talking the Whiz Quiz, an HR's guide to drug and alcohol testing. My name is Lori Oshmann, and I have Gary Oshmann here with me. We are the owners of AZC Drug Testing, and we're excited to announce that this month we are celebrating our 30th year in business.
Very excited about that, from our humble beginnings, in 1996, the company has grown tremendously all that time, really starting from that really local only, Tucson, Arizona, to expanding a little bit more throughout the state of Arizona, and then growing out nationally where we really have clients now in all 50 states. We've actually acquired a few companies over the years to help, grow our footprint, where we really are more than, just that CTPA, Consortium Third Party Administrator. We have 6 collection sites, and we're actually very excited to announce we are opening collection site number 7 in Tucson, Arizona next month in June.
Very excited for that.
Very excited for that. We also have, our fleet of mobile drug testing units running throughout the state of Arizona. And, of course, our employee we've added employee background checks, fingerprinting over the years. So, it's a very exciting time for AZC Drug Testing. Like I said, 30 years, and we're looking forward to the next 30.
Definitely. So today our topic is a little different than what we've done in the past. Gary just got back from the NDASA National Conference, and he's going to share a little bit about some of the things that he learned at the conference and some of the changes or things that we can look forward to in that drug and alcohol testing world. So Gary, if you want to get started on kind of what NDASA is and what this conference was all about.
So the NDASA is the National Drug and Alcohol Screening Association. It really is the major trade association for the drug and alcohol testing industry, for the providers, that's, the laboratories, the third-party administrators, the substance abuse professionals, the medical review officers, people from the background check industry. So, all kind of coming together to kind of, share, what new technologies are coming up. We always get a good representation from several of the different USDOT agencies there to kind of update the industry of what's been happening, issues that they're seeing, and what the future is for the industry. So, it was, last week's conference was in Garden Grove, California, right outside of Anaheim. It was actually kind of nice in the morning. I was able to, take a nice long, walk before the conference started, hit the gates of Disneyland. To my daughter's relief, I did not go in without her. But and also last week, I actually took one of our key employees with me to the conference, for some training, so he can learn a little bit deeper and instill some of that knowledge in him. So, we want to make sure our staff has that, that deep knowledge base. So when you guys are contacting them, they can answer your questions,
right,
for you, very thoroughly. So, I was definitely connecting with, our
lab partners.
Our lab partners. I was, connecting with, some of the other CTPAs out there, kind of finding out what's going on, with them, checking out some some technology, some other possible services that we possibly could add on in the future. We'll let you guys know all about that. If we start instilling some of that. One of the main reasons I always like going to the conference every year. I said, I've been, in the industry for 30 years. But one of the main reasons we go is obviously to reconnect with some of those partners, to learn about those technologies. But also, I said I always like to be spending a lot of my time checking out those industry updates, especially from those federal agencies of what's coming out, and then making sure we can share that with all of you. One of the big issues that was discussed, obviously, is the FMCSA Clearinghouse. There is going to be a change that actually is almost effective immediately. And that is that they are now putting some additional security on people signing up for the clearinghouse. So they've actually contracted out with an outside security agency to enroll in the clearinghouse, whether it is as a company, as a driver, as a CTPA, an MRO, or an SAP, you're going to have to now go through an additional identification verification process. And what that really is that when you are enrolling in a login.gov account for the very first time and you're creating that account, you are going to have your device that you are registering with, take a photo of you. And also it's going to have to then, you're going to have to hold up your identification, as in your driver's license, next to you, for it to verify your identity, and is going to pull that information off of your driver's license to help verify, to ensure that the person who is claiming to log on really is that person. One of the main reasons that they're doing this is there has been some fraud in the industry, especially with substance abuse professionals, where some phony substance abuse professionals have started marketing themselves, people who are not qualified to be an SAP. And what they were doing is getting people who have had violations and had to go through the SAP process. And instead of doing that, they were collecting money off of these drivers. And instead of actually doing a legitimate evaluation, they were just automatically giving them a very next to nothing, minimal return to duty follow-up program, but then also did not require them to even complete that.
And I think the importance there and why this is considered fraud is you're dealing with people who had either a positive drug or alcohol test or a refusal to test, and there's a reason that they had those results. And there has been a process that was created for them to go through an evaluation, through a program if required, and then a series of follow-up testing to, based upon that evaluation. When there's someone giving bare minimum and not really doing an evaluation, it's really putting people back on the road that
are not safe.
And it's putting everyone at risk. And the whole purpose of the clearinghouse is to identify and help people, to keep our roads safe, to keep the industry safe.
Drug and alcohol testing is all about safety. the reason for drug and alcohol testing is safety. So to take this a little further, what some of these fake SAPs were doing is then once they said you were cleared and got the person, showing that they were completed, then they were going back to the person and saying, hey, by the way, we now have all your identification. We know who you are. We're going to now report you back to the clearinghouse unless you pay us more money. And of course, these, they're like, hey, you can't do that, but of course. And so then, of course, these people, the drivers were going back to the FMCSA saying what were happening because basically they were being blackmailed.
Right.
And, of course, FMCSA basically said, oh, yeah, let's go, combat these people. But also, by the way, everything you just paid this person to do is none of it's valid. You need to start from scratch again.
Right. Because they basically admitted that they were trying to circumvent the system.
Exactly. So to help prevent this, the FMCSA decided they need to have this additional layer of security to identify who it is that is actually logging in. So definitely there's some benefits there, but it's also going to now make it much more difficult on the CTPAs to actually assist you, because where we were able to before help somebody register and manage their account remotely, it's going to make us very more difficult because it's now registering a very specific device,
right?
That's being used at the time to do everything. It's going to make it more difficult for a person to start with, start the registration with their phone and now swap over to their computer because it's easier to type. So, we'll see how everything shakes out on this. But phase one is for the new enrollees to be able to create that login.gov account that's needed to register for the clearinghouse, is to have a new identification check on it. But then sometime at a later date, the FMCSA is planning a phase two, which is going to be that they will be using that identification verification process anytime anybody wants to sign in to their clearinghouse account. So that's something we don't know exactly when that's going to come out at this point, but that is something that is in the works with the clearinghouse that they are planning on doing, is having that identification verification process every time you log in to it, where it's more than just that two-factor authentication system that they have now, where it's now going to be very specific to a device, very specific to
an individual. That will, and because I know we help, drivers all the time that maybe who are a little less technologically savvy and they need our assistance to help them with their clearinghouse process. And I think the key there is we as CTPAs will also have to kind of tweak our processes and procedures to be able to still assist drivers.
Yeah.
And there are legitimate companies out there who want to help drivers and help companies make sure that they are following all the proper steps.
Yeah. And one of the things that we will end up doing is we'll probably be doing a little bit more video conferencing with the drivers during this process, so we can actually help while they are on the device, saying, okay, here's what you need to, and we can see your screen. Here's what you need to enter.
Here's what you're going to do.
Here's what you're going to do. So, it is probably a little bit more difficult for them to do it off of their cell phone. It's probably going to be easier to do off of their laptop or an iPad or something like that to do tablet. That. So that's one of the big things that that they talked about at the clearinghouse level. We also, as the industry, have many of them have brought up to the clearinghouse management people that the industry really would like to see for us to help better assist the owner-operators and the smaller companies is the ability for us to help purchase the query credits on their behalf so we can fully help manage what we're required to.
Right.
As a CTPA, we are responsible for the owner-operators section of the clearinghouse, yet we are limited that we cannot act buying that on their behalf. And at this point, talking to the FMCSA, they are still, we don't see that happening in the near future. Just, we're still trying to get them to fully understand the need for it. We're starting to see the lights go up over their heads when we talk about it, but they haven't really started that process yet.
Right. And I think we're also, as the industry, we're seeing more and more companies, not just owner operators, but companies in general, who are looking to a CTPA to help them manage the requirements of the clearinghouse with their annual queries and how it all kind of ties into their drug and alcohol testing program. So that is a step as an industry that we are hoping to see some changes on, and as the clearinghouse continues to evolve.
And then the next thing that we really really talking about is what's the status of oral fluid testing for federal testing. Obviously, that question comes up quite a bit. Really, where we stand is the regulations passed, a couple years ago. The rule is there for oral fluid testing, but why do we not have oral fluid testing right now for U.S. Department of Transportation testing? And where it's locked up right now is that the step that we're at is they got a device that's been cleared by the FDA for use, but now every reagent that is used in the laboratory testing process for oral fluid testing currently is required to have FDA clearance, basically through the 510K pre-market requirement that the FDA puts on this. And the issue we're at is that currently, as of last week, only 3 out of the 11 reagents that are needed to be cleared have been cleared by the FDA. So we still have 8 more reagents that need to be cleared by the FDA before they will even allow for a laboratory to now go through the next step and get the laboratories cleared. So we have to have 11 reagents cleared, and only 3 of them at this point are currently cleared. That's what's holding up oral fluid testing right now, is the FDA clearances. And basically, so what's next is once those 11 reagents are cleared, then two federally certified laboratories, minimum 2 certified laboratories have to be certified for oral fluid testing by the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration on behalf of the U.S. federal government.
And a lot of those labs are already cleared for oral fluid testing, but this is the regulated oral fluid testing.
They're cleared to do oral fluid. They've been doing oral fluid testing for years on the non-regulated market.
Right.
And most of these laboratories, are cleared right now for federal urine testing.
Right.
But this is a separate requirement to be cleared. And the part of the rule is that you have to have 2 laboratories that have been cleared by SAMHSA before
any testing.
Before any testing, oral fluid testing can happen. So we do not know when that is going to be, because like I said, only 3 out of the 11, and it's been, literally for the last year, I don't think, it's gone from much more from maybe a year ago, maybe there were 2.
Right.
So
obviously we've gone from 0 to 3 in a year. We could be here a while if we maintain at this pace.
So, which also, then gets into something actually that came out after the conference, is that there is a proposal in front of the federal government right now to actually eliminate the need for that 510K FDA clearance of all of these, of all the reagents, the lab, some of these processes that are going through. And what's happening is they've gotten this far enough that there's actually going to now be a 60-day comment period that over the next 60 days, they will be asking for the public's feedback on where their thoughts of this is. If that passes, then we actually may be able to eliminate that need for the FDA clearance. And here's the thing, is that these reagents, or existing reagents for oral fluid testing, have been used by the laboratories for years for the non-regulated market. They are proven.
So they're not new reagents. These are
Exactly.
the same reagents that have been cleared previously on the non-regulated side.
Well, and that's what I said. They're really not even happening, because on the non-regulated side, they're not required to be cleared. But basically, science has shown that these are accurate reagents. They are very effective. So what this also is going to allow for is that once this happens, is it may actually then speed up for additional proposed testing methods in the future. The industry has talked about for years allowing for hair testing for the U.S. Department of Transportation marketplace. Currently, the USDOT is cleared for, limited hair testing to happen, but it's considered non-regulated. And that has to be done in addition to a urine device, which is basically what a company can do. Is they are required to, all U.S. Department of Transportation regulated companies are required to do a urine drug test. Whether it's for pre-employment, random, post-accident, reasonable suspicion. But they can, which is limited to 5 drugs: marijuana, cocaine, amphetamines, opiates, phencyclidine. What this is going to allow for is what is allowed for right now is that you can do that you're required to do that urine test, but if you want to test for something additional, you want to use a different methodology, whether hair testing, or you want to test for an additional urine panel, a company still can do that. It's just not regulated by the federal government. And so any positive tests on those are never going to get reported to any, such as to the FMCSA Clearinghouse, or is going to be subject to an audit for whatever mode you are in. That's not something that's going to get reported to future employers, but, we do have that. But now this will allow for USDOT to use other methods, such as hair testing, if they can get that passed through, but they're not going to have to go through the whole FDA clearance process. Laboratories will still have to get certified for hair testing, but they're not going to have to overcome that FDA reagent barrier that they are dealing with.
Because again, those reagents are being used on the non-regulated side already and have a, decades of proven track record for their use.
Exactly. So it is something that we are waiting. But like I said, that proposed rule, to eliminate the FDA requirement, basically was published in the Federal Register on May 1st. So it is now basically going through that that 60-day commentary period. Now, something else that we will that is further along that we will be seeing right now is, and we actually expect it probably by the end of the summer, is that the USDOT has is now going to be allowing for testing of fentanyl in the DOT panel. Basically, actually, it's going to be required in there, but basically, it's not adding a whole nother classification of drugs because it's still considered a 5-panel drug screen because fentanyl is a opiate.
Okay.
It's just a, there's very different, various forms of opiates, and basically it is basically opening up another subclassification of the opiates. But because fentanyl is such a growing drug problem right now, this, that this is going to, they want to basically be more inclusive. But also that's what part of this FDA clearance is also going to be, by eliminating this requirement, is going to now allow for the federal government to be able to change the panels at a lot faster pace. If they are starting to see, hey, there is a possible epidemic of this new drug, they're going to be able to start adding those to the panels at a lot quicker rate than they're able to do right now because of the FDA reagent clearance requirements.
And can you just touch a little bit? You mentioned that fentanyl is an opiate, and there are other classifications of opiates. But under the current panel, will fentanyl show up as an opiate, or does it not show up at all?
It does not show up at all unless you're specifically testing for it.
Okay, so those subcategories of opiates, there needs to be some more specific back-end testing to identify those particular
this is like a few years ago where the DOT had changed the panel slightly, where we were testing really for just like morphine and codeine, where then they got into starting to test for these semi-synthetic opiates, like oxycodone, hydrocodone, which are a semi-synthetic opiate. So years ago, those drugs, the semi-synthetics, would test negative because we weren't specifically testing for them. Whereas now the panel, tests for
can identify both.
Both, yeah, those semi-synthetic. So they basically are increasing that, the subclassifications to allow for other opioids.
Right.
In which now, like I said, one of those now is, will be fentanyl that will be added to that panel. So it's actually one of those things that we kind of talk about, where some people will tell me, oh, wait, the DOT panel is a 7-panel. Well, no, actually, under the federal view of it, it's still a 5-panel drug test, and fentanyl would be, it's not going to be number 8. It's still considered 5 panels. It's just that the subclassifications are actually just increasing.
That opioid test has a little bit more breadth to it. It's expanded out a little bit, but it's still opioids.
Exactly. So that's something they're telling me they think we should see roughly maybe late July.
That will be a big addition, and I think a well-needed addition, because yes, that use of fentanyl is definitely prevalent.
So I guess we will see what the positive rates look like going forward once they start throwing fentanyl into the panel, because right now we really don't, have a full understanding of how deep it is, if it's how much of an issue it is in the transportation industry or not. We definitely see it in other industries, but still but the other nice thing about the DOT adding fentanyl to their panel is right now on the non-regulated testing market, testing for fentanyl is a costly panel, but by the federal government allowing for and requiring the testing of fentanyl on the federal panel, including US DOT, that will take the cost for non-regulated fentanyl testing down dramatically, because the laboratory is going to be able to buy the reagents in much more bulk,
right?
Which is going to create a nice, should create a nice savings out there for for your non-regulated employees too. Right.
So it sounds like you had a great, informative time at the conference. And is there any other things that you came across? Any exciting things that
some of that stuff? There's some stuff that we're definitely looking at as a company. But at this point, I'm gonna keep that under wraps until we're ready to announce those as a company, as we're kind of exploring some of this
new technologies and
new technologies, or some better technologies, or possibly some new expanded services that we may be able to offer our clients, going forward. But right now, until we get a little further along with that, I'm probably just going to keep that to myself right now. But we do appreciate y'all, listening to us, every month. Keep tuning in.